The following allocution, from John Redhawk Coldiron, was presented live at the Earthkeeper Atlantis event in the Crystal Vortex, on the topic of Needle Rock Monument, in southwest Colorado. Needle Rock, long revered as sacred to the Native Americans, as a Vision Quest site, is an utterly astonishing power node, and one of the most powerful, as yet unrecognized mega-vortexial portals in the United States. Redhawk Coldiron is one of the spiritual guardians of this incredible mystical site. It is a hotspot of UFO activity and multidimensional paranormal experience. John Redhawk is establishing a shamanic spiritual retreat alongside this extraordinary power site, literally teeming with ley lines and earth pulses. His presentation is quite fascinating. Enjoy and namaste, with light and love, Earthkeeper.
Our next speaker is John Redhawk Coldiron. He is a wisdom elder, pipe carrier, and spiritual guardian of an incredible sacred site, Sacred Needle Rock. An Earthkeeper round of applause for John Redhawk.
Isn't this great to get the family together? I can't thank Tib enough. I mean, it's just great that he puts this on for us every year and all the different things. So here's a hand for Tib for doing that if he's not here. How many people have ever been to Needle Rock or heard of Needle Rock? A few. Needle Rock is a very interesting place, but before we get going, since you've got the Redhawk on there for my totem, this is how it came about. When I was a child, I was one of the first people, or the youngest people, to go get a falconry license, and I had red-tailed hawks. So when Tib found that out, he gave me the name of Redhawk. This is the Colorado Plateau. So this is the Colorado Plateau. I don't have a pointer here, but you can see the tan portion there, which is in the very high Four Corners area between Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. And this is Needle Rock. Needle Rock's an intrusive rhyolitic volcanic plug located in the Needle Rock Natural Area, 3.5 miles east-northeast of the town of Crawford in Delta County, Colorado. It's about 800 feet tall. It was originally the throat of a large volcano about 28 million years ago, and when the molten rock intruded between the existing sedimentary rocks, the plug eroded, and it could be what's called a lakoth, and I'm going to show you what that is in just a minute. There are private property parcels all around the base, of which I had purchased one for the trust a couple years ago. There's a BLM trail that goes up and rings the Needle. Needle Rock lies on the western edge of the West Elk Mountains, and it's a volcanic plug that pushed up through the crust, and due to the hardness of the basalt of which it's made, it's eroded significantly slower than the surrounding areas. It's very similar to Devil's Tower. So you've got the Earth's mantle, and it goes from the bottom up through the center conduit or pipe, and then as that volcano stopped the magma flow, it just slowly eroded over time. This is a lacothlith, and they form at relatively shallow depths. The dike could also be what is the result of that. So these are some other volcanic plugs that many people should be somewhat familiar with. Devil's Tower, which was the first national monument that was created by Teddy Roosevelt in, I believe it was 1908. And he wanted to save that as sacred land. He was afraid that the white settlers were coming in there and were going to go take and destroy a lot of it. So he created that as the first national monument to protect that area. Now, has anybody heard of the Ute Indians? Okay, so the Utes were the predominant Indians there. And let me read you a little bit here about the Utes. The only Indians that were indigenous to Colorado, the Utes, can be traced to early Fremont men, who migrated from the Bering Strait about 10,000 years ago and occupied the west central Colorado as part of a desert culture which later produced the Anasazi. The Fremonts may have been the predecessors of the Shoshone tribes, one of which became the primary occupants of Colorado, the Utes. They were armed with arrows, bows and arrows, and they were able hunters and feared warriors. Later they acquired horses from the Spanish and they brought it to the new land, and with guns they were virtually masters of the entire area. The Utes practiced a universal religion in a natural sanctuary of mountains, rivers, and forests whose bounty allowed them a comfortable life. They sent prayers to spirits representing floods, thunder, lightning, and wild game. They appealed to a spirit of the blood to ward off sickness and based their spirituality on a natural world around them. They were pretty fascinating that the Utes did not fear death. They held an idealized vision of an afterlife in a world of fair skies where there were great mountains, endless forests, grassy plains, fleet horses, beautiful women, strong men, and sweet rivers that would flow forever. There was no fear of a punitive God, just a paradise in which the spirits reside. A believer could not fear death. So this is the original lands, was basically the whole Four Corners area, including a lot of the almost ancient cliff dwellings and so forth. They were doing a lot of those structures in through there. So it's been fairly well reduced. So there's a little bit down there right around in Colorado and New Mexico border, and then up in Utah. With increasing pressures from the white settlement in the 1860s and 70s, the U.S. government recognized Ouray, who is on the left, and that's translated as the arrow. He was amiable and honest. Ouray was highly regarded. He was conciliatory and realized the futility of resistance, particularly after he was honored with a visit to Washington, D.C. He saw the vast number of white settlers and the troops, the machines, and he joined his white mentors, such as Mears, to promote a policy of guarded cooperation as the only means of coping with the insatiable demands of an overwhelming number of white settlers. Ouray's methods were not appreciated by all Utes. However, there were several factions that warred constantly with whites. Foremost among them was the sub-chief Coldiron, and he's the gentleman on the right. In 1878, when Coldiron had become a sub-chief of the Utes and bore the reputation of a mighty warrior, he witnessed the flood of white settlers into the Crystal Valley, with a heavy heart and a warrior spirit. Yet, when another treaty was threatened with Ute autonomy, Colero reportedly broke his lance across his knee in defiance, vowing to fight for his beloved homeland. Colero raided farms and ranches, set forests and brush fires, and helped lead the attack on white troops to the rescue of White River agent Nathan Meeker in 1879. When the Utes were finally pushed out of Colorado in 1881, a year after Urey's death, Colero still would not capitulate. He gathered a band of warriors and led raids from the Utah reservation. He also returned to the Crystal Valley every autumn to hunt in his old stomping grounds. For 4 years, the U.S. cavalry chased him all over that territory to try to round him up and escort him back to the reservation. Because of the expense, this military venture, and because it was ineffective in deterring this headstrong Ute, the effort was abandoned. So Colero was allowed to make his annual migration for the rest of his life. Now, I was never taught that in school, that there was a band of Indians that literally, they never ever could go get, and they just let them do whatever they wanted to do. So, this is Needle Rock. This is actually a picture from the property. And look at the horns on that bull there, about 8-foot spread. The property, looking at it from above, it's an instant wilderness area. And there's a rectangular box. I don't have a pointer, but you can see where the rock is. On the lower left, there's a rectangle. So the instant wilderness area, which is by BLM, administered by the state of Colorado, is about 83 acres. And then it's surrounded by private property on all sides. Right north or up on the right side, there is a square that is the property currently owned by the trust. And it would be on the northeast face of Needle Rock. Now, I was fortunate enough to happen to take this picture. And I was quite amazed when I saw this. It obviously is some type of an energy beam. There was no moisture in the air to where at that time, as you can see, it wasn't raining. There was no moisture to create something like a rainbow effect. So what I did is I sent the picture to Tib to ask his opinion of the picture. And so what he did is he ran it through a number of filters, and this is the picture that Tib sent back to me in an enhanced version. And he clearly said that he also agreed that that was some type of an energy beam that was being created. Now, as I got further, it seems like as that went off, it also enhanced a lot of the, I don't know if you, can you see those other lines that are kind of coming down from the heavens at the same time as it's coming up from the bottom? So it's quite a remarkable place with very unusual energy sources. Let me go back for a second, tell you how I kind of found this. Whoops. Right here, there's a little road, Needle Rock Road, which is at that lower, you can see a road down at the beneath the Needle Rock part that's sticking up. And there is a little parking area. So I stopped at that parking area and I decided I was going to go walk up the rock. And I'm a oneness blessing giver, and I was over there doing some training on a piece of property that's owned by one of the trainers, and she was in the process of creating is in the process of creating a golden age village there for almost anybody, but people who are especially oneness blessing givers, to have a place to go for a retreat, because this is a very, very special area. So I was over there on it was the summer solstice in 2015. So I decided that before the meeting started, I decided I was going to walk up the rock. So I was walking up the rock, and I think I ran into maybe 2 people as I was going up there. So as I walked up the trail, there's a saddle about halfway up, right at the base of the rock. And I got to that saddle, and I'm a construction manager and a surveyor, and or my dad was a surveyor, and I worked with my dad. And so I saw that there was a pin, and the trail went around the pin, and I knew that that was private property. And I said, well, what's this with this pin in the private property and the trail going around it? So that intrigued me, so I happened to walk over to see what it was, over on the other side of the bluff a little bit, and I looked down, and it was the most beautiful little valley I've ever seen in my life. And so I said, boy, I don't know who owns this, but that's the luckiest person around to go have this beautiful piece of property. So I guess it was maybe 5 days later, 5 nights later, I was asleep, and the Grace was kind of going, John, get up. I'm going, I don't want to get up, I'm sleeping. And so it's like, get up. So I got up and was directed to kind of get on the computer. I got on the computer and happened to see that that piece of property had just gotten listed for sale about a day before I got there. It was actually owned by Joe Cocker, and Joe Cocker passed away on the winter solstice of 14. And I just happened to get there on the summer solstice of 15. So over a period of time, I went and walked the property with the realtor, and as we were walking, and he's also of the Buddhist faith, and he and I, especially me, I'm pretty sensitive to a lot of the, let's say, other powers. And I could feel that there was something very different about this property. When you went to different places, there were what I felt as almost portals. And over time, I discovered that there were a number of these little places on this property. And several of them have looked like they were probably used years ago by the Indian shamans, to where there were circles of trees, and these circles of trees, you can see some of them down there on the very lower part in the center. Those are juniper trees, and some of those juniper trees have 3-foot diameter stumps. They're hundreds of years old, and you can see that horses were tethered to them for years, and that the bark on the lower limbs was all worn off from just tethering horses to it. In the evening, there will be sometimes 100 to 300 deer that will come there and just bed down. So it's quite remarkable in just the natural presence of it. But as I walked around the property more, I discovered that there were places when you walk into them, and we're around that particular area, everything just seemed to completely decompress, and you more or less had almost quiet. It would be very, very quiet, and there would be nothing but little bluebirds flying around and some eagles and falcons and so forth. But in general, it was just walking into going through a curtain into a very quiet place. So originally I was thinking about developing this in terms of potentially just putting in a residence there, or a couple residences. It could take a total of 4. But after I got this picture and spent some time there, Grace kind of informed me that it needed to just be saved. So that was the path I was then taking, was trying to save this property and then create some place where all of the people of Law of One could go to have a place to go for a retreat, and a place to be able to go potentially have some enhancements for ascension. So the property that we own basically goes all the way around the ridge and about halfway up the peak and then back down. So it contains a tremendous amount of the slope of that northeast slope of the rock. So there are probably at least 7 or 8 places that I found, and each one typically has a little circle surrounded by a bunch of very, very old juniper trees. So it would appear to me that that's some place where people were putting up, teepees years ago, or having some place where it was like a meeting circle. So over the next year, I determined that there was no infrastructure in town. So I'd also then gone ahead and gotten some of the property downtown to be able to expand into potentially having a little bit of retail for, some shops, for some gyms, things like that, having a decent place for some residences for some either short-term or long-term. And right now there's not that much rental property or room to live, for people to stay. So I could see a need for potential for some housing. It could be used for a timeshare, it could be used for a rental, condos, things like that. So I just wanted to get a hold of the property to get it safe for now. So when we went to Peru on the trip, I wanted to go to Peru and see exactly what kind of technology was used in all of the different ancient sacred sites there, as to how they had used their structures to enhance the land, to maximize the sacredness of it, and to still have some place to go have meetings, group meetings. So I went down there and found a lot of different technologies that could be used. And Don Jorge was great with a lot of the infrastructure he had put in his places, so I was trying to get that for knowledge, to be able to go bring that to the United States, to where we could have some place that would be a sacred place together. When I got back, it seems like a lot of us who are bright lights draw a lot of bugs. And unfortunately, they are not very friendly to us, and they do everything they can to try to stop us in our tracks. So I had some individuals that then tried to stop me in my process, which is what they've done for right now. In this, unfortunately, a lot of the things that we're doing, the attorneys think that we're crazy. And we may be, but nevertheless, I'm still going to pursue the truth as I see it, and clarity, and help provide ascension. Unfortunately, they seem to think that the stock market is a much better investment than trying to do things to go awaken yourself. So now I'm in a situation to where I'm probably just going to open this up. It needs to be saved. It cannot go fall in the Aryan's hands. This is too powerful, it's too sacred, and it must be saved. So what I'm doing is just opening it up to anyone who wants to help work with me to purchase this property from the trust, and to protect it, and then develop it in the future to have a place for us together that is actually on some type of a sacred site, where there are portals, and you can use the tools that we have with the 5 crystals. And then I managed to also obtain a number of Cintamani jewels. And I think, how many people out there have got the Cintamanis? There's a couple. There's a few of you, yes. Well, these, and how do you feel about those? Do they provide you some enhancement? Yes. So anyone that I've given these to, a couple people in this conference, seem to have remarkable results with them. I've never seen anybody that didn't, if they're in an awakening development. So I managed to obtain a number of these Cintamani jewels to use for training purposes, for people to be able to open up their chakra points much quicker in these areas, to be able to, it's kind of like a shortcut. okay, in terms of being with a shaman for 20 years and maybe finally developing all of the understanding the shaman has. There's been some shortcuts that have been developed right now because of the situation in the world in order to help as many people as possible to become as enlightened as possible. So that's what I'm trying to do with the property right now, is to create a place for everyone to be able to come and gather. It's very sacred, very special, and it must be saved. So anyone that would like to go work with me on this, I'll go outside and you can just go sign up, and I can certainly give you information. It would be for some place for you to go in the future, or potentially for investors. So any questions? I'm going to have to negotiate that with the trust. I would say the property itself is probably going to be in the range of $350,000 to $400,000. Combined with the number of people, I think that that's quite affordable. 38 acres. There's already water on it. It has multiple water sources in terms of flood irrigation that I need to go restore one of the irrigation ditches. But it's also got a well casing drilled, and there is a, Joe Cocker put in a, what's called the Mad Dog Water Service, and it is a large artesian spring up in the mountains. It's just piped directly down, and they chlorinate it in a little spot on the other lot next door, and then that's one of the water sources for that area of just clean water. So it's already got the water already on there for domestic purposes. The energy beam is directly on the property, yes. So there's a flat, see where the half, it's almost like a half circle that's created by the road, almost on the, just to the right of the center of it. There's about 17 acres there that's really flat. And it's just gorgeous, gorgeous cropland. And I mean, it's beautiful. But then right below it is where that's occurring is there's another little spot that's flat that you can see that's just at the very bottom of it on the other side of an irrigation canal there. So there's a water feature that runs 24/7 through there. It's almost like a small stream, but it's just a large irrigation ditch that runs through there. Anyway, that's where it seems to be the most power is centered right there where that beam is coming out. That is always a spot where the animals seem to go and locate themselves for the evening. It's in Delta County. This would be about 70 miles from, it would be southeast of Grand Junction, or it would be about 60 miles from Gunnison, or it's directly, as an eagle flies, it would be about 20 miles west of Crested Butte. So you have a tremendous amount of ski resorts all around that area there. The primitive area starts within about 2 miles of the property. So it's got a lot of features. It's also 15 miles away from the Black Canyon of the Gunnison. So that is another powerful feature. The Black Canyon of the Gunnison is about 2,200 feet straight down, carved through black granite. And it's a national park, and it's not one that very many people go visit, but it's incredibly impressive. It's similar to the Grand Canyon, like on the last level. As the Grand Canyon steps down into 3, this is just straight down. There are places that it's about 100 feet across and 2,500 or 2,200 feet deep.
How far from Paonia, where Joe lived?
10 miles, maybe 12. Okay, it would be southeast of Paonia, and it's about 10 miles from Hotchkiss.
Sign me up.
Okay. Well, I'll go out there and get a table, and then I've got a pad, and you can just give me some information. But anybody that wants to help me, because it's just absolutely gorgeous. You've been there before, General Bear. Have you had tell me about your experiences with it? I think you went there right after the Colorado trip last year, or the year before, didn't you?
Yeah, it's really an amazing portal. I've had all kinds of incredible visions there. Nia has. Tib has seen ETs landing there. It's one of his favorite places in Colorado as well. Anyway, it's quite an amazing place.
Thank you. As I was going up there the first time, I did see two cylindrical objects that were rotating around me in a circle. I don't know what they were. They certainly didn't look like a normal airplane to me. But I did see a couple of objects. As I was walking up the trail, as soon as I got to the top of the saddle and put my foot on that property, I was sucked into it, and both the objects were gone.
Were those objects white by any chance? Did they appear white?
It would be kind of like a white, an aluminum type white. Okay, it looked almost like a fuselage of an airplane without any marks on it, but just the fuselage of it, to me. And I just saw a couple of them going around, but I don't know what they were. They didn't look like a normal plane to me. It's the Coldiron Family Trust, which I'm John Coldiron. Go ahead. However, there are people that are trying to go say that I'm not competent to take care of it with the investment at the moment. Go ahead. They're called Cintamani jewels. Cintamani. They are very special. I think there's some kind of a little geonode, which would be some type of an impact. It almost looks like an impact glass of some type. They look like very, very large, almost Cintamani's, and they're all in the different colors of the chakras. So they would be violet and indigo and blue, green, and there are a few orange ones. I have some of them with me. A few people have used them here with some fairly remarkable results. So anybody that's interested, I can go get them and we can look at them later on. I don't think they're from this planet. I'm not sure. If I had to say, I would say Sirius.
Where were they found on Earth?
They were originally in Tibet, and then they went to India, and then it's my understanding that they were then moved over time to Angkor Wat, and in about 900 to 1,000 they were moved from Angkor Wat to a temple in Phimai, which is almost an identical temple to Angkor Wat. But it was not used as heavily. It's not very well known. And they were rediscovered in about 1850 by a Buddhist monk, to my understanding. So they were hidden away many, many years ago in order to keep them. I was buying them from a shaman who got them because the monk passed away. And before he passed away, he told them that he wanted to have the shaman disperse these, a lot of them, to America in order to go use them for a reawakening. So they're now back to where they can go be utilized to speed up ascension for mankind. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.